everyone. Today we're going to talk about something very near and dear to my heart. And we're looking at 2.8 and 2.9 women in the demographic change and aging population. So our tidbit of the day is that chewing gum actually boosts your concentration. So try that while you're doing your homework. Our learning objectives today are to explain how the changing role of females has demographic consequences in different parts of the world. We're looking at social values, access to education, employment, healthcare, contraception, all of that stuff. And 2.9, explain causes and consequences of an aging population. So first we're looking at women, and the material on here is going to be a little bit less than what I'm going to talk about. In many developing countries, the role of women is as a mother. Her job is to make babies and to care for them. And beyond that, she often doesn't have much of another role. So as we move through the demographic transition, we start to see women's role change. They become more equal to men. And that is a very big deal, and it has quite a lot to do with how we shift in the demographic change, but also we kind of have to have a cultural shift in order to get from a stage 2 to a stage 3. So it's a little bit interesting how that works. The more we start to see women as equals, the more they become equal. So it's kind of this really round concept. But we're going to look at two major strategies for lowering crude birth rate, because that's really kind of where our focus starts. The first idea is a cultural shift. When we start putting an emphasis on education and healthcare for women and taking care of the girls and women in our society, we start to move to this idea that they are equal, that they have a role of human in addition to potential mothers. We're not valuing them for their reproductive organs, we're valuing them for their minds and their personalities. The other part of this cultural shift is contraception, and this one's a little bit less clear-cut and a little bit more difficult in some places. So first we're going to look at education and healthcare, and why education is the number one form of birth control in the world. Education starts out, obviously, with like elementary school. But the more years of school that a woman has, the fewer children she has. And this goes for if she's attending primary school, middle school, high school, college, master's degree, doctorates. The more years of schooling she has, the more likely she is to have fewer children. And this is generally a good thing. And we see this for a few different reasons. Number one, the more time she's at school, the less time she is somewhere getting pregnant. Secondly, more education means that she has better access to better jobs. It's also an equity issue. So if we are valuing women and girls' minds as much as we value boys, they can be in school for equal amounts of time. That means that we're seeing them on similar levels. When we stop girls from going to school because they start menstruating, because they're seen as unclean, dirty, or ready to become baby makers, we're not valuing them in the same way. They stop going to school, they have children. And that's not okay, because we have to think about, at the very least, the age at which most girls start menstruating, and this is in their early teens at the very latest. You could have 11, 12, 13-year-old girls who are getting pregnant. 3 in 100 girls across the globe get pregnant before the age of 15. That's a problem. Think about how old you are, because I'm willing to bet that most of you are 15 or under. And imagine having a pregnancy, having a child at that age. You are still a child yourself physically. You are not physically ready, much less mentally ready to have a child. And when women have more education, they also have more economic control of their lives. They're not depending on someone else to fund their lives. They are able to buy things for themselves. They're able to buy their own homes. They're able to run their own businesses. They have control. And that's the most important aspect, is a woman can control her life. Also, when women are more educated, they are better able to understand their reproductive rights. And this goes back to that idea of control. They have control of their bodies. They know what they can or cannot do. They know what is or is not their right. And we think about things like Whose job is it to say that a woman will get pregnant? In many cultures, it's the husband's job. A woman has no say in how many children she has. She might say something like, "We'll have as many children as my husband says we'll have. If he wants another child, we'll have another child." And this may often come at the expense of her own health and life. Women are able to make more informed reproductive choices. Do they have children? Do they not have children? How many children do they have? Do they use contraception? Do they have surgeries? What do they need? What are they going to choose? And finally, they're able to select effective methods of contraception. There are a lot of folk remedies for contraception, a lot of ways that a woman might be able to avoid a pregnancy, and many of them don't work. So the more educated a woman is about what's available and what she has access to, the more likely she is to select a method of effective birth control of some sort. Then healthcare. Education and healthcare are our two most basic rights as far as this is going. Improved healthcare for women means that our infant mortality rates are declining, our maternal mortality rates are declining, our women's health overall is improving. Sexually transmitted diseases are more avoidable when a woman has access to healthcare and can be treated when a woman has access to healthcare. Remember that this doesn't necessarily just come from intentional sex. This could be the result of rape, and women are often the victims of sexual violence in many countries, whether it's marital violence or otherwise. Children are immunized, they get vaccines, they are less likely to die from easily preventable diseases when we have better access to healthcare. And overall, the more that infant survival is ensured, the more likely a woman is to choose safe contraception for family planning. She has options, she's using them. She's able to make the choice. All right, and then we have the idea of lowering crude birth rate through contraception. The second way that we lower crude birth rate is through contraception. Even without better economic development, contraception can and will drastically lower birth rates. You give people access to contraception, they have fewer children. But social and cultural stigmas can reduce use and increase birth rates, maternal mortality rates, infant mortality rates, and other issues. We often see these in the form of restrictive religions, just in social norms, and the idea of what a woman's role is and what she should or should not be doing. Many times this could lead to very unsafe practices. This could be the backwoods abortions if a woman has too many children or if her life is at risk, and those in and of themselves are incredibly dangerous. So when a woman has access to safe contraception, we can reduce birth rates, we can reduce pregnancies safely. And then we're going to talk about aging populations. These things are really closely correlated because we are more likely to have aging populations when women are equal in a society or when they have more rights in a society. So an aging population comes about when we stop having so many children and our people start getting older. On average, the population ages. With aging populations, we get this in a few ways. One is that cultural shift, the fewer children being born overall. Second is better access to good medical care. So we have improved detection and treatment of infectious and degenerative diseases. People are living longer and they're living healthier. But it comes with some consequences. And we're going to separate them out into social, economic, and political. Socially, having an aging population can drastically challenge family dynamics. In the United States, it's not terribly common for us to live in multi-generational households, although it is in many places. We end up with fewer young people to care for old people. Often young people are busy working outside the home, they have their lives of their own, and they don't have time or resources to take care of their elderly generations. This can result in moving elderly generations to retirement facilities, to medical treatment places. And this can be a problem too because those are not homes, they're facilities. It can weaken family ties because often the older generations are the ones that help tie families together. They keep everyone connected. Removing grandparents from the home can also remove familial support for things like childcare. And now instead of having grandma and grandpa watch the kids, we have to pay for daycare for the kids. And daycare is incredibly expensive. Ask your parents. Okay, so economic consequences. The more retirees we have, the fewer people we have working and paying into income taxes. The big problem here is a few things really, but the first one is the government-sponsored retirement programs rely on income taxes. This is stuff like Social Security. It is not paid for from the past. The people working today pay Social Security for the people receiving Social Security today. Secondly, many elderly people have little to no personal savings, and this is for a few reasons. Sometimes they just didn't save anything. Sometimes medical costs add up. Sometimes they live longer than they expected they would. Often right now too, we're dealing with a generation of women who probably, or many of them, didn't work outside the home, so they relied on the husband's income. And in today's world, that pension, that retirement, just doesn't go that far. And finally, longer lives and high medical costs mean it's more expensive to be old. We have more years to pay for, we have more costs to pay for. And those things together can make it very, very difficult on the individuals and also on the society, because the money has to come from somewhere if it's getting paid. And lastly, we're looking at political consequences. So aging populations can shape our political landscapes. We know that. Older people tend to be more likely to vote in some places, and older people also tend to see pensions, that retirement bit, and healthcare as their priorities rather than education and environmental concerns. Let's be frank about this. Essentially, they have less time on the earth, so they're not as focused on the things that take a long time, that are way behind where they are. They're not as focused on kids going to school. They're not as focused on the environmental things that they're not going to live to see. Okay, that is it. So our learning objectives: explain how the changing role of females has demographic consequences in different parts of the world. Women have fewer babies, but also then we end up with aging populations eventually. And then explain causes and consequences of an aging population. So 2 things I want you to do in your notebook. First, identify the stages of the DTM where you expect to find a high elder dependency ratio. And then secondly, explain how cultural changes in the role of women can affect a country both politically and economically. Okay, that's it. Make sure you go back and rewatch anything you need to watch. Read in your textbook, and have a great day. Bye.